Like everybody has AI. Oh, AI is good, but it's a commodity. I couldn't care less. But what is behind the scenes? What is there in core values in the
Is that
company?
freedom is having the option. And what you created was that freedom. You have the option to sell or not sell.
We should leave this place a better place than how we found it. And you cannot do that through negativity.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. My guest today is not new to the startup world. He's been involved in that for a number of years. But he's got this business that I believe he started it. He founded it at some sort of basic level. He's one of the nicest guys in the world. I spoke to him not too long ago, and I got off the call and I'm going, man, that was just such a great call. I need to get him on the podcast. You're going to see why his perspective on growing a business, his perspective on team, and so forth might be a little different than other people that you've met. That will help to explain why he's as successful as he is. Ralph Peeters, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Charlie.
Now, you started QFI from scratch, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Now QFI is in the business of providing these machines for food quality assurance type stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. So we develop equipment for the food industry, trying to keep everybody's food safe and sound. And so, yeah, we provide the equipment to inspect, do quality control, and sort food items. Yes.
Got it. Now, people don't wake up in the morning generally and go, you know what? I've got this idea. I'm going to get in the food quality business. Like, that is like, whoa. They're not like these little kids that are like, one day I'm going to get in the food quality business. So, I mean, how did this all come about?
So I'm one of those people that didn't wake up and say like, hey, I'm going to pursue a career in food. But it started around the time when I graduated. And I got one of those kind of old-fashioned letters in the mail for a company that was active in the food space or the technology providing space for the food industry. And they were looking for people to join their team, travel the world, install equipment, do training sessions for their customers. And I was like, yeah, this is really what I would like, travel the world. And that's how I ended up in the food industry. And I guess I never got out of it. So, has been an exciting journey.
I find that you hear a lot of like gurus in the entrepreneur type space, and they oftentimes talk about, find something that you love, do something that you love, and so forth. But then what I find now, having several hundred episodes, or I think we're 250 or somewhere those episodes of Beyond Seven Figures podcast, very rarely do I meet somebody that was like, I just couldn't wait to get into this industry. Instead, they fell in love with building something. They fell in love with entrepreneurship. They just fell in love with creating. And that's why many people are able to start all these different businesses. Would you say that you fall in the camp of just loving to create stuff?
Yeah, I think I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur or that I ever one day would start a company. But somehow I think a series of life events happened to guiding me there. And so I think it's not something that I actively pursued, but I just happened to be in the food space and kind of see some potential of technology that was needed for the future. And then try to pitch that idea with former employers. We didn't necessarily have had an ear for the idea. And then one day, 2015, it's like, you know what? Either I keep hammering or knocking on that same door, or I just do it myself. And that's how QFI got started. So it's just, I think life is always a matter of like meeting the right people at the right time. And you go through like many intersections and ultimately you end up in a certain space. And I guess that's what happened with me.
Right. Now, entrepreneurship is never a straight line of success.
No.
They probably look at what you've recently gone through and say, wow, you're lucky, or wow, this happened so fast for you, so easy for you. But we know that there's peaks and valleys. So kind of talk to me about those trials and tribulations and, what were maybe some of the hardest parts of taking your business, and then you know, how did you overcome them?
I think it's not a straight line. And I think there were several moments where, yeah, you just get to the point and say like, well, should we pull the plug on this? But I think what always helped is like, we didn't kind of say like, hey, let's think about maybe something we can come up with. It was basically the industry telling us what they needed. And I think that's where it often goes wrong, where if you're in a certain industry or a certain space, people tell you what they need. And I think if you then know that industry well enough, I think chances of success are a little bit higher than when you kind of blindly jump into something, build something, and then hope that you can find the customers for it. So I think the good thing was like, yeah, I was already in the industry. Some people that were early on in the business came out of the industry. So I think you have some baggage that helps in kind of, yeah, going on the journey.
Let's actually stay with this for a second. You said people tell you what they need. And I
Mhm.
believe that to be true. We hear it all the time. It's just many times the CEO and the founder, they don't hear it. They don't see it. So, you know, and most people in your position, they would have not seen, they would not have heard.
Mhm.
So, what did you hear and what advice do you have to those that are listening right now? They're saying, how would I know if my customers are trying to tell me something? But
Mhm. Well, first of all, I think it starts with spending time with the customer. So my early days, and even before starting QFI, I spent most of them in the plans of our customers and potential customers. And that way you really start to understand like, what are the pain points, what are the bottlenecks, what are the itches that need scratching, so to speak. So I think it's just spending time with your target customers and audience. And I think then you will better understand like the world they live in. You will better understand like what is it they really need. Because you always have like the nice to haves, and then you have the ones or the solutions that are absolutely critical for
yeah,
their success. And those are the ones that I think everybody should focus on. It's like the nice to haves you can go without. And even if like the economy takes a downturn, the nice to haves are the first ones that people cut and eliminate. It's
you're
the
right.
ones that are business critical that will survive, hopefully. And so that's what we did, and just, yeah, listen to it. And I think also as humans, we have kind of deviated from listening to our kind of gut feel. I know it sounds cliche, but I think often people overthink things. And there's always like, in any major decision, you always have that first initial gut feel.
Yeah.
And then you start thinking. But often it's that first gut feel that tells you something, that, and in a good and a bad way. I mean, there's also decisions that we made where the gut feel is like, you should not do this. Then you still do it, and ends up being the wrong decision. So I think it's just a combination of understanding the market and having a gut feel that helps you kind of direct decision making.
Got it. It's funny you mentioned that there were several times where you felt like maybe you should just pull the plug. And I
Yep.
had a mentor of mine very early on that told me that you'll be the closest you'll ever be to breakthrough success at the very moment that you want to quit more than anything else in the
Mhm.
world.
100% agree with that.
For all those times that you were sitting there going, man, I think maybe I got to pull the plug, or,
Mhm.
so bring me to one moment in particular that
Mhm.
stands out, and then walk me through how you overcame that one moment.
Mhm. Well, I think everybody has those moments at different stages, and we had multiple. But one of them, for example, was 2020 when the whole COVID thing came down. I was in Australia with a colleague, and on the way back, you just started to have that feel, and that was in January, February timeframe. You started to have to feel like, okay, something is going on here, and nobody really knew yet what was happening. But we came back, and the first thing we did is like, okay, we need to adjust our targets for this year. We need to adjust how we do business because something majorly is about to happen. And I think it was still at that stage a gut feel. Come fast forward like a month or a month and a half later, every country starts shutting down. And it turns out that in the end, our revenue that year was like less than half of what we anticipated. But I think it was that gut feel like something is happening here. And we were still in a fairly early stage, and we were always kind of a last minute decision, like to buy a QFI piece of equipment. It wasn't the biggest expense in a plant's operation. So we were always kind of last minute decision, so to speak, as in, oh, I have some money left, let's buy a QFI. And so we knew that some customers would not be purchasing our equipment that year. And so I think it was that moment where we said, like, okay, let's completely rethink what we do. We not scale down, but from an expense perspective is okay, let's not spend money here and here, but let's fully invest it in the next piece of equipment or technology we want to develop. So we used the downtime of COVID to develop the next machine. And guess what? All of a sudden, like a year and a half, 2 years later, we more than tripled, if not quadrupled sales. And so it's those kind of decisions where, yeah, I think it's, yeah, you're at a point where you say, like, shoot, we're not going to make ends meet. And all of a sudden, like, fast forward a year and a half, and a year and a half sounds maybe long, but it flies by. All of a sudden, the sales is there because we developed another solution that made sense in a post-COVID era in food processing plant. So it's like those small steps where you say, like, how can we this quickly go from like really like almost in a desperate mode to like, yeah, sales scaling up. So that's I think it's often in any company's history, yeah, like you said, is those moments can be really close to one another.
You know what? It's interesting because if you look at a stock market, so I used to own a proprietary stock trading company.
Mhm.
We ran millions of dollars in the markets and so forth. And so when you look at a stock chart, there's resistance and then there's support, right? So resistance means you're about to get to a new high, but there's just a lot of downward pressure, a lot of
Mhm.
downward pressure. It feels like everything that you're doing, like there's something like trying to stop you. Then when you get down, there's that support, and that support is move down a little bit, and then there's a little bit of struggle, but you hit this little bit of floor. You get little whispers of hope and whatnot. We go back up again. Anytime that I have felt this area of challenge now because of my background, I'll say to myself, is this resistance or is this support?
Mhm.
Usually you get to support if you kind of gave up for a little bit and
Mhm.
you just haven't been leaning in, because then it's just you just have this slippery slide down. But when you've been pushing hard, and then you make a few wins, and then you hit this resistance. At one point I used to just feel a little deflated and just be like, oh my God, this is exhausting. But now when I get there, I get excited, and I just start sitting in this place of gratitude because I'm like, all right, this is great, guys. Guess what? We are close to another breakthrough. Right?
Mhm.
Where we're at, we're close to another breakthrough. We're hitting this resistance. Let's make sure that our system's in an order and this and that, blah, blah. We're going to hit this other breakthrough. And then inevitably just pushing through and being persistent enough, boom, we just hit this other breakthrough.
Yeah.
It's just during those moments of resistance, and the same thing happens at the stock market. If you give up too quick, then you start to slide back down.
Mhm.
You gotta really push to get through that level of
Yeah.
resistance.
It's just one of those things where I think in those moments it's also absolute critical that you're working on something that you're passionate about. Because when the passion for whatever you do isn't there, I think that's when you maybe quicker give up. Whereas if you care about what you're doing, or the business you're in, or technology, or whatever the impact that is in the world, I think it will also easier get you through those kind of downturn phases. And I
Yeah.
always tell people around me, is that, like, I have to feel that I never worked a single day in my life.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean that I didn't put in many hours, but it's just, yeah, I care about the industry, and there's passion for it. And I think that gets you through almost anything.
But there's one thing that I know about you that you haven't brought up, and I have a feeling it's because you're extremely modest.
Hmm.
And we've known each other for many years now, and you're consistently aware or intentional about the people. Like you're very, very, very much aware about your
Hmm.
team, about your people, about making sure that they have every resource and every opportunity to be successful. You want to make sure they're operating at their best self. You're very, very, you're an extraordinary leader, because from everything I know about you, you often put your people first. And you could tell that your people have a lot of respect for you because of that.
I think it's ultimately the engine of a company, the people. And I think and we're not known as the company that pays the highest salaries or anything. I mean, you can always find companies that pay more, but I think what's important is the people that are on board, that they each in their own way like add value to the company, but that the company also makes an impact on their life. And because ultimately everybody puts a lot of effort in building a company and building out a customer base and supporting them, and each in their own way, a company is a puzzle, and that puzzle somehow needs to fit together. On the opposite side, we also, if somebody does not fit for whatever reason, we're also a company, and I'm also a person who then thinks it's in the best interest of the company and also the individual to separate ways. I think that's the most fair you can be towards your employees and your team members. But yeah, I value the team a lot. That's for sure. Yeah.
And not just value, you've invested,
Mm.
substantially in their success. I mean, you took certain team members and you invested a substantial amount of money in coaching for them. Why was that important for you to make that decision to spend that money to invest in coaching for your team?
Yeah. Yeah, because for a company, you're ultimately in business to address a certain need in the market to make money, because ultimately it's a business, it's not a hobby. So I definitely care about the numbers of like the financials. But at the same time, if you can also make an impact in the team and make somebody grow from where they're at to an executive position in a way shorter term than they could do in another company, then to me, that is the real impact of QFI. It's impacting the lives of our customers, but also the team. And like now, I was always aware that at some point I had a certain shelf life as a CEO, so to speak. And so we started working on getting the next person ready. And that was somebody internally, which yeah, he's definitely substantially younger than I am, but I thought that he was the right person for the position. And then you cannot get there without making sure that you support them in the best way. And that is through coaching, through exposure to various aspects of the business. And so, yeah, I think that was one of my frustrations in previous companies where I think with a little bit more effort, we could have made more impact in the team members' career developments or their joy in work and stuff like that. It's an obligation you have as a company to put effort and time and money in developing your team.
You often find that C players, they show up just for a paycheck, right?
Yeah.
It's 9 to 5. By 4:55, they're already packing up their bag and they got one foot out the door, and it's just, and those are C players. And then you've got B players, and B players kind of fall into two categories. So you got some B players that are working really, really hard to become A players.
Mhm.
And then you have B players that, have that they're great, but they're not as ambitious as they otherwise
Mhm.
should be. And so they kind of stay B players. But for the B players that have these big ambitions to become A players, and for the A players, once you're an A player, you want to be always the best. And so you're constantly trying to do more. Those are the people, and few people understand you did, but few people understand that when you invest in your people and you help them advance their career and get more of what they want out of life. See, I've talked about this quite a bit in past episodes. Darwin's survival of the fittest is not who's the toughest, baddest animal, on the planet.
Mhm.
Darwin's survival of fittest actually boils down to if you can help others get more of what they want to succeed more in their life, then in essence, they sort of conspire around you to help you get more of what you want.
Mhm.
Now, this sounds, maybe a little foreign to some, but if you think about the lions, right? The king of the jungle, he'll sit there and he's usually kind of laying on his rock, and the pride will go out, they'll make a kill, and they'll bring the king the kill so that he can have the first bite. Make sure he's hungry. And what he does though is he's like, look, if somebody comes into this pride and threatens the life of the pride, I'll make sure that everybody else here is safe.
Mhm.
That's his job, make sure everybody else is safe. So they make sure that the king survives. And we see this across in business too. Like by you taking that step to invest in your team and to help them get more of what they want, It's human nature. It's not like some sort of calculated strategy. Like if I do this, then they do this, because then it's like horse trading, right? Uh, but it's not some calculated strategy. It's just human nature. It's you've invested in the team and you're helping them get more of what they want out of life. And they know by helping you succeed, then you only help them more. So your success benefits them more and more and more and more and more. And so that brings us to then where you end up now. You've got this great opportunity, or rather it's, it's already happened. You had this
Mhm.
this big liquidation event and so forth. For anybody that has either not had a liquidation event or is currently going through the liquidation event, like walk us through that whole process and what was tough about it. What would you do differently on your next one? And
Mhm.
then the great things.
I would say almost a 2 year or a little bit more than a 2 year process. And the reason why it was is because I think what I never started QFI to sell it off and then go and sit in the backyard and read the newspaper. I'm not that type of person. I don't care about it. But I wanted to create the company and also realized at some point it would make sense for the company to be part of something bigger because you can only do so much with one individual company. We always try to build out the business in a financial healthy way so that we never had to go through an acquisition just because we needed the money or just because we had to sell out or just because the investors pushed us to sell the company. So we always kind of were very open with the investors. We always kind of, and we raised only a limited number of or amount of money, but at reasonable valuations so that there was no like that hallelujah exit that everybody was striving for, that that was the only outcome. And so it gives us a lot of flexibility to find the right partners to team up with in this next era of the company. And so, it was just roughly a 2 year process in trying to find who's the right partner for us to team up with and how can we not only create synergies, but have cultures on the other companies that are similar to what we stand for. Like we tremendously care for our customers. So why would you then ever team up with a company that doesn't care about customers? Because at that moment, you're going to lose your team. The team that you built so hard to get together, to gather around the same values. Yeah, and then you just throw them out of the window for some money. And so for me, that was important. And so we finally ended up finding another company that had the same values and also financial backing that also had the same values and that also cared about the sustainability and the future of this planet. And so it was just, yeah, I think the ease of mind we had going through this process was because we did not have to do this for financial reasons or for any other, but for the right purpose and the right cause. And so that I think that was a good thing. It gives us a lot of peace of mind. It also, I think, allowed us to go through the process in a somewhat relaxed way. I mean, it's never an easy time with all the due diligence. And yes, definitely there were a lot of sleepless nights, but the peace of mind we had going through this process was because we could do it for the right reasons. And so ultimately, I think that also immediately, like the minute we announced about the transaction, immediately a lot of customers reached out and said like, well, this is the right partners for you guys. And this
Good.
combined effort is something that we really believe in. And that was important for us. That's also the reason why I'm still involved in the business, why I'm still a shareholder in the new structure, because it was never about just selling the company. It
Yeah.
was like building up to the next era. And that next era would also be the era where I was no longer the CEO of the company. And so initially when I brought that up to team members, it was like, well, but what are you going to do? I said, I'm still going to be part of this. I'm still going to be part of this bigger something that we built, but I would not be the right person to remain CEO in this next era. And so all those things, it absolutely made sense. And now customers, team members, they all realize like, well, this was the right thing to do. And that's what you ultimately want, because otherwise, why spend a lot of time and effort building something up to then just throw the values and throw everything that you stand for out the window just for money? So yeah.
Well, I mean, freedom is actually having options.
Mhm.
And that's
Absolutely.
what a lot of people miss is that
Mhm.
freedom is having the option. And what you created was that freedom. You have the option to sell or not sell, but you created options for yourself. And the other thing is you were very intentional. You knew what you wanted and you had certain non-negotiables.
Mhm.
And this is what I want. Here's my non-negotiables, and you made it happen for you. And in the end, this will prove to be far more financially rewarding than if you just went after the money.
Yeah,
And
100% agree.
yeah, and not only that, you were so intentional that you knew what your future was going to look like. And this idea of stepping away from being CEO, CEO by nature is just a title, right? The value that you bring, it was never CEO.
Mhm.
Regardless of wherever you were and wherever stage of the business, the value was never the CEO. The value you brought to the company was your being a visionary, right? It's being able to set the strategy and the direction for the company.
Mm.
And it was you being a visionary that took you out of 2020 to create that new product that quadrupled the growth of the company. It was you being a visionary that understood what your non-negotiables were and what you ultimately wanted in a partner. It was your visionary that formed this deal that's then going to take you and the rest of your team to a whole other level. You don't have to put a title on that,
Mhm.
right? It's you
Yeah.
being a visionary. And I mean, I'm CEO, right now, but like you, it's like, I don't have to be CEO.
Mhm.
I actually, what I love the most is when I'm strategizing and
Mhm.
having all these visions. Like if somebody else wants to step in, so be it, right? That's fine with me. I just want to create.
Yeah,
That's what I,
absolutely. It's often, especially if you kind of go through the business and the areas you start to kind of understand better what your strengths are and weaknesses. And then I think it's indeed coming back to what you mentioned earlier. Then it's important to know like what the strengths of the team is and play to those and not try and change somebody to kind of completely undo the weaknesses. No, it's every person has strengths and weaknesses. And if somebody else can cover the weaknesses of yourself, then you come out way better, I think. And that's what we always try to do. And yeah, I think it was a lot of intentional work that we did at QFI and just trying to get that group together. And then I always tell people it's like we have, I think, the most diverse from backgrounds from what people did in previous jobs to how they operate, but there is a certain kind of strand of DNA that we all have kind of in a similar way. And that's what I think is the exciting thing about the company. It's like just people gathering behind the same idea and values and just going for it. And then the rest will figure out, I guess.
yeah. Why do you smile all the time? I don't think I've ever spoken to you
Yeah.
when you don't have a smile ear to ear.
Mm.
And if you showed up on one of these calls and you weren't smiling, I'd be really concerned, right?
Yeah.
And it's a very infectious, it's a
Mhm.
wonderful energy that you have. It's one of the reasons why I very much enjoy any opportunity I have to connect with you. It feels good being around you. Well,
Yeah.
so why do you smile all the time?
It's something that both my wife and I decided a long time ago. When you interact with people, you immediately get like energy from people. And I think we only have a very short period of time running around here. And so if we want to make the best out of it, we need to leave a positive impact on people around us. And but we do the same with others. Like people, and it doesn't matter whether it's like colleagues or friends or neighbors or anything, somebody that is negatively impacting you, you should not be around that person
Yeah.
for too long. I mean, you always have those people in life, but I do believe that if you surround yourself with positive minded people, it just has an impact on you as a person. So maybe it's because there's a lot of positive people around me that allows me to smile all the time and be positive, because I think that's the only way you can make an impact. Like we should leave this place a better place than how we found it. And you cannot do that through negativity. So maybe that's where the smiling comes from. I'm not quite sure.
That's a good way to have, especially in your role. I mean, when there are weeds in the garden, you recognize that there are weeds in the
Yeah.
garden, right? But I see positivity as, people oftentimes obsess over these problems. You can, in the same sentence, you could say we have a problem, or you could say we have an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it could be the exact same sentence, but those people that say we have a problem will continue to make the problem bigger. Those people who say we have an opportunity will find a way to overcome the problem, just like you did with COVID, and
Mhm.
turn it into something significantly bigger. So, this is the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. You've been an investor in several startups, you've had your own startup. For our listeners, what would you say would be your biggest, best tip for anyone that wants to take their business beyond seven figures?
Huh. I think it's building the core. So what I always believed in was like you can cut corners along the way, but the more you then scale your business, the bigger those issues will become. And I think that's also one of the reasons why we invested quite a bit of money in coaching and building the team, making sure that if there were issues with the equipment or the technology, that we fix them. Because once you start copying, which basically is growing the business beyond seven figures, you just turn a smaller business into something bigger. But if you do not address the core, like core values, the core of how you operate, the core of your technology, all of those systems, if you do not optimize them, if you do not systematize, then you're just going to copy and scale the issues and the bottlenecks. And then you never, I think, get the max out of a business. So we early on, we said, like, whenever we see something, whenever there is an issue, let us address those issues. Let us fix those issues. Because ultimately, if we don't fix them now, we're going to spend a lot of time and money down the road in fixing those issues. At least to me, is what makes most sense in, yeah, scaling or growing the business. And the same goes for like investing. Like you want to look beyond, I think, the buzzwords these days. Like everybody has AI. Well, AI is good, but it's a commodity. I couldn't care less. But what is behind the scenes? What is there in core values in a company? And if you, it doesn't take too much time to really figure out, like, is the team working properly together? Is it all about buzzwords and raising as much as possible money? Or is it about something core that the world needs? And so that's how I look at like scaling and growing a business. And also what we did at QFI is like, let us fix issues we see along the way and not like kind of push them aside, because fixing issues is never a fun thing.
Right.
But what is a fun thing is scaling a business and not having to deal with bigger issues that needed fixing in the early days. So I think it's, yeah, we always had a very simple mindset when it comes to growing the business.
When we're talking about issues and fixing issues, it's easy when we have a product and we're like, we've got to fix the issues in the product.
Mhm.
But when you have a service-based business, you can identify what those issues are simply by having a CEO scorecard, is what we call it, right?
Mhm.
Where you look at the metrics and you see what's working and then ultimately what's not working. Also, when we're talking about just the clients itself, having some sort of proactive system strategy in place so you understand, are my clients happy? Will they stay
Mhm.
or not? And while NPS is one way to do it, for an NPS score, or CSAT, depending on what you do, just proactively getting on the phone, surveying your clients, asking them, how they are, and if they were in your shoes, maybe what is one thing that they could do better.
Mhm.
And it's also important that predictive behaviors are really important. Spend the time,
Yes.
understand, like, you know, what are my clients doing right now? And, what are some behaviors that are going on that generally indicate that maybe something shouldn't be going, like something's not
Mhm.
right. So we can
Yeah.
proactively address it.
Mhm.
One of the things that I'm sure you feel, I know I feel, is that if I have to call a client, if I have to call a company to tell them I'm not happy, I'm already pissed. But if they proactively reach out to me and they'll say, "Hey, I got a sense that your energy was off,"
Mhm.
or "I notice you haven't been showing up to, whatever,"
Mhm.
or "Notice you haven't logged in a while. Is everything okay?" Then I feel like there's a genuine concern for
Mhm.
me, and gives me the platform to open up and share. and I usually stay around a lot longer.
No.
If I have to pick up the phone and tell them that I'm not happy,
Mhm.
I've got
Yeah, absolutely.
one foot out the door.
Yeah. And that's, I think, it's applicable for any business, whether it's service, whether it's actual equipment, whether it's people business, so to speak. I think every company is a service organization, whether you want to admit it or not. And service means how can we have the most impact, positive impact to the customers or whoever is paying for the services.
Yeah.
And I think that's also not kind of then staying away when times are rough. And often you see, like, especially more sales oriented people, it's like, it's all good and sale is done and let's have a drink and everything. But then when times are rough for whatever reason, those are the moments you need to show up, I think. And because those are the moments that the customer will remember.
Yeah.
And the next time around they're spending money on service, equipment, or anything, they'll remember those moments. And that's what I think is important for any business.
For sure. If you can break through that transactional experience and make it more of a
Mhm.
transformational experience by
Yeah.
understanding their challenges, their issues, their problems, understanding their needs and their desires, their aspirations, their wants. Anytime you cross that bridge and you make business personal, people will stay with you even if you're more expensive than
Yeah,
others.
absolutely.
Yeah. And the same thing goes with your team. The team will stay with you even if you don't pay more than some of the competition. They'll stay with you as long as they feel heard. They understand their goal. You understand their goals and where they want in life, and you invest to help them get there. That's a great thing.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot today's podcast. I mean, we've talked about the importance of being a must-have and not a nice-to-have. We've talked about the importance of making sure that you're truly listening to your customer or your client. That was a big factor for your ability to not only succeed through 2020, but also then take you to this, wonderful liquidation event. We've talked about the importance of investing in your people. You've done a lot of that through coaching over the years. We've talked about the importance of vision and how there's a lot of strength in vision. And it doesn't really matter what your title is, whether it's VP or CEO or whatever. It's about vision. We talked about the importance of optimization. At Predictable Profits, we call it, the OSI method: optimization, systemization, and then innovation. Optimize first, optimize, get all your numbers, know your data, know what's worked, put it into a system so that it can happen repeatedly over and over again with a lot of consistency. Then once that's done, then it leaves you room to innovate, create something new. And then you go back to optimization, systemization, innovation, and you keep that cycle going. And that's also, a really important thing. We've also talked, and one of the most important lessons I hope you heard was that, Rolf was very intentional. He was very intentional with what he wanted when it came to his, just not only his entire business, but then even that liquidation event. A lot of people would chase the dollars and cents. Ralph is playing the long game and will end up making exponentially more money because he was very intentional with the type of partner he wanted, very intentional with the relationship that he wanted with the partner, the relationship that his customers would have with the partner. It's paying off really, really well for him. And so being real strong with your intentionality and your non-negotiables is an important part to being a successful leader. So for many reasons, Ralph, I want to take my hat off to you and, say well done and congratulations on all your success. I mean, we've been, I've known you now for, I don't even know how many years. It's been
quite a few years. I lost count, but definitely for a while, yes.
A long time, and it's really been an honor, and to see and watch you grow over these years, it's been really, really cool. So well done. You deserve all the success and a lot more. And people want to learn more about you and follow some of the work that you do. Where do we send them?
I would say just go to LinkedIn. I'm a fairly active member there, so you definitely find me there. I always say, like, I do not have the best social skill set, but I'm active on social media. So yeah, no, LinkedIn would definitely be the best place.
Yeah, so you can find him, Raf Peeters, RAF Peeters. You'll find him there over on LinkedIn. Fantastic. And for all those looking for additional tips, strategies, and information to grow your business faster, more predictably, and less dependent on you, also check us out at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Godet with my friend Raf Peeters, and I will see you in another episode.